Hi. Hi, everyone. Hello.
Um, I
Y- Hi. Can you all hear me? How many people are here? I'm seeing just two people.
um, we have about 88 of them in this class.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So, I think I can start.
I I Caleb, yeah, it's Deji, yeah.
Okay. Hi, guys. My name is Conrad, and I will be taking.
No. I'm just checking in with you, not saying
Yeah,
so
but
much.
can will I be able to hear them speak, or I'll just be hearing myself speak? But it seems like I'm just hearing myself speak only.
Hi, so
Oh,
you'll not be able to hear them
I
speak.
wanted to ask how many of us have actually.
okay. Yeah, guys. Not comrade. It's Conrad. It's Conrad, please. Yeah, I can see we can only communicate via the chat box. Um, I would have loved to get to know your names, but I mean, you're 109 and counting, so I'm pretty sure that's not going to be possible. So I'll be taking us on open source and version control today. Yeah, please, you all can actually drop your names on the chat box. For those that I can greet, I would Oscar, Anthony, um, not comrade, please. It's Conrad, Conrad. Martins, Akinwumi, Jibril, Mark, you're all welcome. I will. I think for the purpose of this training,
Hi guys,
for the next one,
if you
for the
can hear me in the
next
front end class, can you just say
for the
hello?
next for the next training, I will be
Okay,
for the next
okay.
training, I'll be bringing out more of a slide. But for this, um, I will just focus on what we already have or what you had already worked on, and we can start off from there. Hope that's fine. Please drop whatever information you want to drop on the chats. That's our way of communicating.
Okay
Uh,
guys,
we
so
can go on with that.
Shitemi will be joining our class
So,
very soon. So
guys,
just
first and foremost
cool
is
down a bit.
what is open
And I
source?
hope we're all ready for
I
today's
think the
class,
first time I got
today's
to hear about
session.
open source was
You can
probably in
drop in your
2010.
Slack group as many of your track
Was
member
probably
that
in
are not here. They should
2010,
join this
and
session.
back then I picked a lot of interest in open source because I wanted to understand what Linux is. Uh, so I got to understand that then I was having this communication between open source and Microsoft. I found out that open source was saving my life a lot, and
Are you okay?
I decided to
How you doing?
follow open source. So I think I've been an open source advocate since 2009, and up until today, and
Yeah, you
it's
just
been
join and
it's
mute
been a
others.
very
So
very interesting. It's been very interesting for me up until now. I think the last time I used a Windows system was well over 10, 15 years ago. So, according to Wikipedia, based on our training here, it says open source is a software application released under license, which the copyright holder grants user the right to use, study, change, and distribute
Tabi,
the
Tabi,
software and its source code
you
to
can
anyone
mute
for
it.
any purpose.
Any tab you are
So
not in, you just mute it.
it was based on this open source license had that we had Linux, whom the father is Linus. It was based
No.
on this open source project that we had a lot of projects that are going on right now. Android operating systems, different Mint, different types of operating systems, which have all come up under the open source line
It's Tabi.
systems.
It's Tabi.
A lot of applications
Shitemi
have
is
been
here.
built based on the open
Tabi,
source.
please mute your mic. I Shitemi. Yeah.
Open source care. Yeah, so Fumilayo, we are doing open source. So. Yeah, okay, for Deji that is talking at the
Welcome.
background, click on his picture. You see a 3-button icon. Then you click on that and you mute it.
Yeah, I know, right?
You have to understand that cloud engineering or cloud computing, with cloud computing, you can't avoid Linux in it. So we can't just jump into taking you into an AWS course or whichever cloud computing course, because this actually you have to start from the ground up. So the first thing we need to understand is we need to understand the history. So here, this is more or less this is more or less if I'm not yeah, so this is more or less the beginning part of it, where we just start from the ground up to the main thing that you want us to take you through. So please, we're actually starting with open source. We have to understand what open source is all about. We have to understand some of the things that you can do with open source, where everything all originated from. Yeah, so like I said, what open source, I'm sure we almost have actually gone through our videos. If you have gone through your videos, if you haven't gone through your videos, please, if you haven't gone through your videos, please try to go through your videos, especially for the next training, so that we will all more be in sync and would know what we're expecting the trainings to be more about. So like I was saying, what is open source? So open source actually allows you to edit, configure, study a particular application, get the source code, make edits to it, and make your changes or correct whatever you think is wrong with it, and maybe push back to the Git or wherever you may have gotten it from to help improve a project or help improve a particular system. Once you start doing things like that, you become an open source contributor. Yes, we're going to have classes on Saturday also. Please, I think you might need to take a look at your outputs. Probably if you're using your phone, you should ensure that it's on speaker or you put it on your ears. I think that way you'll be able to hear it. Or you log out and log back in as Wumi has suggested. Now, the next thing is, what's the history of open source? So the history of open source started back in the 1950s when the computer systems softwares were delivered and a lot of purchases. So there was a lot of mismatch here and there on to how to bring in these things, how to work with these things. People brought out their own patents. People brought out their own patents and things like that. So the top people in the industry, the likes of the IBMs, the likes of the Xerox back in the days, and co, they all came in together, formed a conglomerate. I call it just formed a kind of team that needed to set standards. So it was during that point that they developed the team called the UNIVAC team. That was in 1953. And that was a typical example of one of the first things that was delivered as an open source software. So a lot of people came in, Netscape and co on came in, and they all and the UNIVAC, UNIVAC. So that's an A2 system which was delivered back in 1953. And that's an example of the first open source solution or first open source software that was released. So back then, they all came in together. There was plans on what them to adopt for it. And eventually, they accepted to call them open source. So they became open source systems. So you need to understand that despite it's open source, it means that the code is available for anyone to work on or edit, but there are still some licenses which most of the systems actually take. So some licenses are completely free to edit. Some licenses are not completely free to edit. Some you don't actually have access to the source code. I mean, general public, but the body that manages the open source solutions have access to the source code. So I think we all need to realize that, because open source does not mean that everything is completely open. Now, going to the next chapter. Yeah, please. I think we all can drop our questions. Yeah, so for us to drop our questions, we need to kind of something, probably use 3 question marks, so that way I would be able to identify that as a question. So, okay, Oladapo, I can share my screen. I can share my screen so we can see what I'm seeing also. Yes, there's a question and there's a Q&A section where, oh, okay, great. So we can all put the questions in the Q&A section. Thank you very much for taking me there. So the next thing here is, what are the various fields that you can operate in open source? So as an open source contributor, you can be a software engineer, you can be a you can actually be a writer, documented, an open source documentator. Documentation. Please, my English is not the best. Bear with me. Yeah. Something. Thanks. Yeah, thanks. I will be checking that out as we are going on. So you can be a product designer, where you design systems and things like that. You can actually be an open source marketer, where you are marketing open source solutions to various clients, promoting different projects, engaging different users on the internet, and things like that. You can be a project manager as an open source contributor. You can be a community manager as an open source contributor, where you're managing different people, organizing different events. Thank you very much, Miriam. My organizing different events and organizing different programs. Here, now, one of the best parts of being an open source contributor, I think I think I've contributed once in the open source environment in what there was a code I was working with while I was still writing code. I was still coding, I was still into coding, I was a software engineer writing a PhD. I was able to contribute to the WordPress at some point ago. It was quite good because at some point I got I think I also got I got some I also did some contribution under the Terra, but here I was not actually providing any support because of the level of number of questions I was able to answer. I got a little bit of recognition. You as an open source contributor, you get recognized, and one of the best parts of things as an open source contributor, Abdullah. Okay, yeah, thanks. This is Nepal. Please, you guys should bear with us. Nepal struck. Bear with us. Nepal struck. Yeah, I'm back. So as I was saying, as an open source contributor, you get a lot of recognition, and that is one of the good things about being an open source contributor. You get so many free passes. You get invited for you get invited for talks and things like that. You get noticed, and that also builds your reputation in the tech industry. And that's, I think, to me, that's one of the good things being an open source contributor. And I believe at the end of this, you should be able to identify an area in open source that you would actually want to be a contributor in. It's really good, and I think that is quite good for us starting this training from the ground up. So you don't just understand so you understand the 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 most littlest things. Oh, me and English, please. The smallest things when it has to do with tech, and how important these small things can also. Yeah, I think my NEPA is back. My NEPA is back. So now the next thing is I'd already said some of the benefits of open source, but let's look at some of the official benefits of open source. One is very flexible. So open source gives you the ability to download the application and reuse it. But you need to understand one of the major laws of open source is that if at any point in time you have to use an open source application, no matter what it is, if at any point in time you have to use an open source application, no matter what it is, you'd need to understand that open source has to be, you need to give credit to whichever company or whoever started building that open source application. That's one of the things that we all need to understand. So you have to give credit to whoever owns that application or whoever started writing that application. Open source is very cost effective because I mean, you're just downloading the entire source code and you're reusing it. So far as you know what you're doing, you can customize it to suit your own use case, as the case may be. It's scalable. Like I said, it's something that you can redesign. If it's a source base, if it's the content, you can rewrite it to suit whatever it is you want to work with. It helps you build work experience. Yeah, it helps you because, I mean, you have it to understand that you would. Sorry, Deborah, are you not hearing anything right now? Please, if you guys can't hear, you might need to log into your systems, probably, or put the phone on your ear or something. Okay, thank you, Tuyo. All right, thanks. So it also helps you build communication and soft skills. Yes, because you're exposed to a lot of resources, open source resources, and if you're someone that likes to read and learn, you will actually be able to pick up one or two new things from these resources that you're already exposed to. Open source has a mentorship program and network opportunities. There are some open source websites where you can actually get mentors all over the world and who might be interested in, or someone whom you are interested in one of his projects and you make a contribution to it. You can actually communicate with the person and you can be able to communicate with the person. So it actually helps you with that, and definitely career growth. Like I also said, for you to use an open source application, you have to, and you really have to give credit to whoever wrote that, because that on its own is against the law. Yeah, so at the end of, I think I'm done with this first session. So I'll be taking questions. Now, I'll start with the first question. To what extent is an open source engineer allowed to operate? An open source engineer is allowed to operate to the maximum extent of that particular open source project he's working on. You are free to do anything you want to do with it. But like I said, you also have to understand and read the various licenses that are related to open source. So there are different open source licenses, and you have to ensure that you read these licenses and agreements, and you are familiar with these various licenses and standards. So some of the various licenses that we are aware of, which I'm pretty sure of, is the Apache license 2.0. That one is because, yeah, guys, please give me a minute, please. Someone just brought my attention that you guys have actually done some of these trainings. I'm really sorry about that, but that's fine. This is just a recap. So I'm pretty sure that I can take all your questions. So I can take all your questions on open source, and then I would now take you straight into the agenda for this week, which is Linux on its own. Yeah. So how many open source do I have to contribute before I get recognized? Really, you don't really have to. You can contribute. Like I said, I was recognized for my contribution to Terraform, and also for a contribution I made to WordPress so many years ago. So you don't necessarily need to have multiple contributions to open source for you to get recognized. The most little thing that you actually contribute to open source, you get recognized almost immediately. So are there open source projects to be found outside GitHub? Yes, there are open source projects to be found outside GitHub. Lots and plenty of them, lots and many of them. There are some open source websites. If you go on Google, there are some open source websites. For instance, Bitnami has an open source licensing page. Apache, if you go to Google, Google has an open source page where they have so many open source projects that a lot of people are working on, which you can take a look at anyone that piques your interest and continue from there. Can we have examples of how to use open source as a cloud engineer? I can't figure out on like front end. Which front end are we now? You need to understand something. As a cloud engineer, most of the things that you're actually using in the cloud environment are actually open source related applications. To start with, the Kubernetes that we all know of is an open source application. Anyone can actually contribute to Kubernetes and help build the platform. So it's not locked. It's actually it was an application that was built by Google, and it was called Bug at the time, and eventually they released it, and it was now licensed to an open source platform who now manages it. So anyone can actually make their contributions, and there are lots of applications that we use right now that are all based on open source. Does commenting on GitHub issues pass as a contributor? Depends on what you are commenting on. If what you're commenting on actually helps solve the problem, yes, it actually passes as a contributor. But I don't think that would give you some form of so much of recognition. But sometimes depends on how many commits and whatever it is that you've made that actually gives you that access. So exactly 6:30, I think I will just hop into the topic for today, which is Linux. So I'll start with if you have any more questions, please ask me while I prepare myself for the training for today, which is Linux. So I'll start with an introduction to Linux. So what is Linux as we know of it? Linux is an open source operating system, which was created by Linus Torvalds. I think he did that as a project. He started Linux as a project. That was what he did as a project, and eventually it became widely used everywhere. And today it's now an open source. It's now an application that it's an open operating system that everybody is using. It's an operating system that today runs well over 80% of the servers that are being used all everywhere in the world. It's an open source. It's an operating system that today powers most of the things that we know of, most of the fundamentals of cloud like we know it today. That was actually being powered by the operating system. So you can see how powerful that operating system eventually became, or eventually is right now in the industry. So you need to understand, one of the good things I like about Linux is the fact that people like Ubuntu have made Linux look quite beautiful. They've given it a very good interface that it's almost in comparison with the Microsoft the interface that we know of. It's also how will I put it? Yeah, it's also very kernel. They use the kernel a lot to do most of the things that you have to do with it, and like we always say, it's something that you can always pick up a Linux operating system and redesign it to make it look exactly how you really would want it to look. So it's a very interesting thing. One of the best parts of Linux like I said before, is the terminal. Please, can you all just give me about 2 minutes to get my training material for today properly available? Please, I'm still here. Just give me a few minutes, please. So I think some of the things that I will take us today in terms of Linux within this very short time that we have. Please pardon me. I'm pretty sure by the next training on Saturday, I'll be able to put up some materials. This is quite impromptu, but you just might have to pardon me. So by next training, I'll be able to put up some training materials, and we might also go through this again. One of the things about the Linux is the terminal. I'll start with the different types of operating systems that we have in Linux. So we have Ubuntu, which is generally, I think that is a South African operating system built in South Africa. And today it has gotten quite a lot of recognition. So I think it powers about 25%, about 40% of servers worldwide. It's being used today by especially for people who don't I think I would say it was built from Debian, and Hello? Shit. It's not feeling this thing at all. Hello? Oh, shit. So the terminal, I didn't know I didn't know I was offside. So the terminal, that's one of the things about open source applications that we know of. The terminal is one of the easiest ways to communicate in open source. This is an example. Zoom in. No, I'm just showing my terminal. So this is an example of a terminal, and there are quite a lot of things that we can do with the terminal. For instance, you can create files, you can create folders. Okay. You can create files, you can create folders. I'm not going to be doing so much on this, so I will just make the text bigger. Is this big enough? Is this okay now? So I'll just take us through some of the commands that we can take on open source on Linux. Very quickly. So some of the few things that we can do on Linux very quickly is we can things like bash commands that we can do on Linux. I'll start with files, manipulation of files. So I will be creating a file where I would just to show you all. You can log into a system. You can log into a file depending on the location. For me, just so I'm going to log into my documents. Oh, so now I'm in my documents folder. You can see, if you want to see the list of everything in your documents folder, you can just do the ls, and this will show you all the list of everything in your documents folder. If you want to clear the terminal, you can use the clear clear. That would actually help you clear the documents folder. If you want to make a directory, you just type the make directory. Let's call this Alt School LMS, Alt School Cloud. Let's just call that. And if I do ls al Alt School Cloud, so it shows me the different directory permissions, and it shows me what is actually contained in it. If I want to create something in it, let's call maybe touch training YAML. Okay, I can for it to, if you want to go into the part, this one, that's if you want to go into the Alt School folder, So you just type an alt school folder. The ls command, the lsal command is a list all. So the dash a, for instance, if you want to see all the things that you can do with a particular command, is the help. You can, it's the ls is just a list. It just shows you everything in that particular folder or wherever you are located. Then the slash a shows you all, and the l shows you the privileges for that particular, for all the contents in that particular folder. Yeah, it also shows you the hidden files also. It also prints out both the hidden and on that's why we are using the dash a. So that's the all, and it shows you everything. Now, for the, if you want to create a file, for instance, in this, so I'm going to use the touch altschool.pdf. So it has created a PDF file for me. As you can see, the altschool.pdf, which I just created. Yes, this is Linux. No, this is not Linux. This is a Mac. Yeah, this is Linux. Actually built for Mac. Is actually built from Unix also. So they're all considered practically the same thing. So the same most of the same commands you use in Linux would actually work on a Mac system. So yeah. So if you do an ls, you can see it. If I do an lsal, this will show me everything. It will show me, give me the permissions you would have. So the directory permissions, the read access permissions, which is the R. It means the write access permissions. So it means that whoever is root will be able to read, write, but he will not be able to execute anything on this particular will not be able to execute whatever it is on that particular application. It also has a read. So it means whoever is not root will only be able to read the contents of this folder, and whoever is not in the group also would also be able to read the contents of this folder. So you can actually manipulate the content and give different people different access and different rights based on whom they are communicating with. Yeah, so if you're using a Windows system, you can actually you can use a Linux-based terminal. You can download the Linux terminal. There's a way of doing that. You can either use a Linux terminal or use the PowerShell, which actually comes with a Windows system. So far you have Ubuntu running on a VM, then you should be able to run the same thing. Yes, if you have a VM and you have Ubuntu running on that VM, you should be able to run exactly the same thing that I'm doing. So some of the very, very important commands in Linux, I'll start with most of the very basic, like I just started with most of the basic commands, is the sudo command. So the sudo command helps you run commands as a super user. So if you don't have it's what we call the administrative rights. If you don't have administrative right, you will not be able to do that. Another command is the no hop command. So the no hop command is just a command that helps you, that protects your commands to ensure that you can close the terminal and the command will keep on running. So if you're running an application or you're running a command that is taking time, if you put a no hop command and you close the terminal, that command will still be running in the background. Another talking about the background is you can see all the processes that are currently running on my system right now by using the top. Top is going to give you all the current processes that are running based on, you can see the time they've been running, you can see the port at which they are running on, the memory they they are taking up. So you can see the process ID and things like that. So you can actually use this to also debug your system and find out what is taking most of your processes. Now, if you can see what's taking most of my processes here is Firefox and some of the plugin container, which is actually within Firefox, taking as much as it's 88% of my CPU, one of my CPU. So that will let you know that you need not to be running Firefox. I need to reduce the number of browsers I probably have running and things like that. So most times, in most use cases, when you are trying to debug a system, or debug a server, you would use this stop to identify what is running and use that to the processes that are running and use that to debug it. Another thing again, another popular command that we use here is the echo. So apparently you can just use the echo dash, and that would give you, if you just display a line, let's say just call this. So if you have let's say echo Conrad, you can see it just displays, just re-echoes it. So sometimes if you have an environment variable, let's say for instance, export name Conrad. I've exported this into the system. I've stored it in my terminal, and if I want to echo it, just need to call this as an environment variable, call the name, and you can see my name Conrad as I had actually exported it. So this is a popular tool which will be used for which can actually be used for bash scripting, which I'm pretty sure most of us will actually go into once upon a time. Okay, so I think I will just quickly take some few questions. Can the echo command be used to redirect with redirection to create files? I don't understand that question. Please, could you flesh it out a lot better so I could understand it? Please, what shell am I using? I'm using ZSH. ZSH. It has a pronunciation. Trust me, I don't even know it. It's the same command you use in Mac, also used in Windows. Not all commands you use in Mac is used in Windows, because there are Windows uses a PowerShell and they have their own customized commands which you use. So not all commands, but some of the commands are actually can actually be used both in Windows and in Linux. Can we use Git Bash for this? Yes, you can use Git Bash for this, because Git Bash actually integrates with your terminal, and I think it uses ZSH also. What is a shell and a kernel? So a kernel is it's what is actually managing or what the operating system is actually built on. A shell is just the terminal itself running on that particular kernel. So the kernel version is more like the version of which the Linux what I call it, I'll call it just like the way we have the Windows 10, Windows 11. Those are like the kernels to a Windows machine. Now our kernels to the Linux also, it's more like where the foundation of the Linux itself, what it runs on, what manages it in general. So I'm unable to install VirtualBox on my M1 Mac because it's not supported any alternative to machines. I think M1 has a peculiar issue because of the version. So if you're trying to download the Vagrant, if you want to use Vagrant, I think you shouldn't use. You should try to use the Intel boxes. Try to download the latest Intel or processor based systems. That way you should be able to run. But I think you can just drop this issue on the Slack, and I can take a look at that, and I can take a look at that and resolve it, or give you a possible link to where you can resolve it. Okay, I will explain Echo again. Echo is just a way of calling out, but probably, like, for instance, I just called my name. I can decide to just call your name, Henry. This is what part of the things we use for debugging, or part of the things you use when you want to see what is content in a particular application. If you're writing a bash script and things like that, this is what you use to just print it out, to print out what was there, or print out the value of a variable, or print out the value of a or print out the value of a variable, or things like that. So it's just an easy command I just used to see what was there before. How do I go back to my command line environment after using the top? Use the Control C. Just type your Control C. That will take it back. That will take you back to your environment. So there are different ways of installing Ubuntu in your Mac M1. But unfortunately, I think one of the best ways of doing it is by installing Vagrant. I think you install Great Vagrant with you use Brew. So there's something called Brew. There's a package manager called Brew, which you can actually use to install Vagrant. So if you do something like, I think it should be Brew cast install Vagrant. Brewcast install Vagrant, that should actually help you install Vagrant. So I'm running it here because there's no cast on my system. You need to also install cast, so just call Brew. Cast is also a package manager. You need to install it on your system too. So I can actually send a documentation on that, but it's quite easy and it's quite straightforward. I think I will share Brewcast. I think it should be Brew install cast or so. Brew install cast. Yeah. I think it should be Brew install cast. Or there's a link that you need to install cast from, and once you have cast running, you would be able to install Vagrant. So there is a Vagrant installation which I can share on this link. Okay, I don't think I can. Can I? I don't think I can share anything on this link. So I think I'll put it up as part of the things that will resolve. So ask me these questions on Slack, and I will be able to send you. And I'll be able to send you some of the questions that you've responded to. Some of the questions. Yeah, so is sudo similar to how we run? Yes, exactly. So sudo is the same thing as administration, as an administrator in Windows. Please, can you change your IP to DHCP in Windows? How do you change your IP address to DHCP in Windows? I think you need to go into your. It's been quite a while. I actually worked on Windows, but I think you need to go into your network settings, and you should be able to see IP version 4 or something, which you click on, and you have the option of making it a static IP or making it a dynamic IP. So I think you should click on the option of dynamic IP, and it will be able to assign an IP to your system based on the router you're using. If the router also supports you to have a dynamic IP. I've forgotten my password and can't run sudo commands. Any help on how to retrieve it? It depends on how you actually set up the system. That's if you are the administrator for that system, the same password you used in logging into the system should actually give you the sudo permission. However, if while you are spinning it up, you decided to create a different password as your administrator, then there's no way you can retrieve that. So I'm sorry, you might have to reformat that system and reinstall it again if it's an Ubuntu system, for instance. Yes, I will share my Slack ID. I'll share my Slack ID at the end of this. I did the broadcast install Vagrant and it still didn't work. Okay, so I'll share documentation on this at the end of this. And I believe, Anonymous, I believe you're using Mac. So I'll send all the documentations you'd need to install that. So I'll share that on the page, so you should be able to sort that out from there. Would it be nice if we go step by step for MI users to install VM and to use Vagrant? Yeah, that would be nice. Okay, I can actually do that. So I'll do that next. Do we still need to install Linux VM with Vagrant while on a Linux operating system? If you want to, yes, you can. If you still want to, you can have Vagrant on a Linux operating system. If you want to have multiple OSs running at the same time, yes, you can. Any info on Linux for us using Linux? I use Fedora distro. That's interesting. A lot of us have run away from Fedora because it's actually a test distro, and it's not stable. But Fedora distro actually uses the same commands as the CentOS, as the Red Hat. So you'd use commands like, rather than using the apt, which you'd use for Debian, you use commands like yum, you use commands like dnf to run installation and things like that. So it's quite different on the way it works, but most of the other things, most of the other commands, all the basic Linux commands would actually run successfully on a Fedora distro. Yes, I will drop my Slack username. Yeah, using Max. Okay, so for the purpose of this, I will just quickly take us through installing Vagrant on a Mac. I don't use an M1. I think for a very, very good reason. I think I have an M1. So for a very good reason, I avoid using an M1 because I feel that there's still a lot of things that needs to be done to actually help improve it. Since I'm still old school to a very, very large extent. So, but I can just see if there is something that we can do to install. I think Vagrant is actually having some issues with the M1 system. I think Vagrant is actually having some issues with the M1 system. So there is a workaround I can see here, but there's a workaround I can see here. What's the con of using? So the M1 guy, I think there's a workaround on that. I don't know if that will be necessary for this course right now because there's a lot of things you are doing right now, and it's going to mean having to install, having to install, having to install Docker containers and all that, to use it. For this, there is another workaround again I can see here on the website. I will put it as ask a question. Yeah. So if you go to that site, you should be able to see the downloads for an AMG, which is a plugin that was built by VMware to help resolve the issue. What's your take on Commander and the command line I'm using on Windows? I'm not using my Windows command line interface. Is it okay to do that? So that's fine. Commander is also good. What's the con of using an Ubuntu OS in a VM of your Windows system? I think it all depends on the amount of RAM you have on that system and the amount of RAM you're assigning to the VM, which is the Ubuntu. The advantage of that is you can actually switch. It's a whole lot more easier to switch, and it's a whole lot more easier to switch using the interface. What Linux distro would you recommend? I think I've been a very strong fan of CentOS, though it's now end of life. But right now, I think I would recommend you just sticking to Ubuntu, or anything Debian. Just makes your life a whole lot more easier and far much more easier to understand. I currently use Item to run my terminal. Do I still need to download the VM? It depends. You don't need to download the VM. Item is like you just said, is a shell. It's a type of shell. Also, it's a type of. It's just like Commander. It's just a type of the type of Linux terminal which you can use. So it doesn't really matter. So I would continue with the Linux commands right now. Some of the other Linux commands that we need to get used to. So I would move on to file permission commands. That's something we call change mode. That's what it means. So here for the application I currently have running for the what's it called, for the file I've actually created, I told you there is the LSAL, which gives me the various commands that or the various permissions that you have for this particular system. So I'll just take a very quick one to explain what these permissions are. I'll just take just the next few minutes to explain what these permissions are on Linux. So now for these permissions actually indicates the first four actually indicates a group, a user group, and the first one actually will tell you if it's a directory or not. So because it's not a directory, there's no D on it. The next three will actually give you the read, the write, and the execute permissions for a group, for the owner and for the user, which is me. So I have the right to read and I have the right to write anything I want to write on this file, but I don't have the right to execute it. The next three will give you for a group. So it also has the read, write, and execute for a group. And the next three will give everyone the right, the read, write, and execute for the group. So if I decide to change this to clear my screen. So if I decide to change this to, let's for instance, so if I say plus X, school, it means that I'm giving the user executive rights. So you would see that the permission type will change for this particular file. And you'll see. So practically what I've just said here is that I've said that the user can also execute. That's what I meant by the U plus X. So it has added the file option to the user. That's the X. So this user can also read, write, and execute whatever it is on this file. If I decide to, you can actually use numbers also. So if I decide to give a 777, it means that saying everybody here can actually read, write, and execute. So I'm giving everybody the access to do it. So as you can see, everybody in the group, which everybody which is the last three can read, write, execute. Everyone in the group can read, write, execute, and everyone and me, who is the owner of this, can also read, write, execute. You can, so there are different permissions that you can give to systems. I'll try to also set up a documentation for that. Now I've given it a 400, so it means that nobody can read, nobody can write, only the user who can read it. So I can only read it, but I cannot write into it. So these are just some of the things that you can do with the file permissions in Linux. You need to understand that the file manipulations for Linux is very, very important. Really, 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 really important. It's one of the core things that you need to understand when you're trying to learn a Linux operating system. Because you will be faced with a lot of file managers that will be tired of you. Some of these manipulations you can't actually do if you're not a super user, but some you can actually do if you're either a super user or not. So going back to some of the Linux commands, I actually used this before. So if you want to create a file, let's say docs. So this is a docs file I've just created. Based on my permissions, I've given it the permissions also. So you can use the touch command to actually create a file. You can use now every file has a user and an owner. So you can actually identify the group. You can actually identify the group. Sometimes you can see all the various groups that are actually within a Linux command, where you can say, for instance, I want to see all the groups in my now. Trust me, these are all the groups that are here. Various users, various applications, and the groups that they actually use. So you can see this just shows us the database of the groups. I can decide to, if you have a particular group that you're looking for, if you have a particular group that you're looking for, you can decide to let's say cat etc group. Say I want to look for the admin group. Now you can see the admin group, and you can see the admin is also root. The users that are supposed to be there, the ports and everything that is connected to that particular admin group. So this is also very important in understanding Linux. Also, a very key thing that you need to understand how to manipulate files, how to give access, different users access, and things like that. Another thing again with file manipulation, for instance, is if I'm looking for a file name, and I'm looking for a file, and I'm saying, if I do this, I'm saying search everywhere. I'm using the command find, and I'm saying search everywhere within my system for a file name autschool.pdf, for instance. Yeah, so now what it's saying here is that it has found, I'm searching for everything. So it has found everything that is related based on my system, on my based on my search command. It's looked for everything that is related to Alt School, and it has showed me where it is. It has given me the location where all these things are. Based on, oh yeah, I didn't spell it properly. So what it did was it just looked for everything that is related to that, and it has shown me. So you can see, because I didn't spell it properly, it just gave me things that are related to it. This is it showing me, giving me the response to the question I asked it. Look for everything within my system and give me the name Alt School. So these are some of the commands that you would actually need, especially when you are trying to, when you're writing a bash script, for instance. So there is the remove command. The remove command actually, this, you can actually do this to remove a file, remove a folder, as the case may be. So what I want to remove is just a file name. So I will remove this file out school docs. Oh, remove all school docs. Why is this bell ringing? So you can actually remove, so this now, I have been able to remove this. As you can see, it's no longer existing again in my system. If you have to remove a file name, a folder, so if I make a folder here, Alt School, yeah. Now you can see I have the folder here already created, Alt School. If I need to remove that, if you just do the Alt School on its own, you will not be able to remove that because it's a directory. So you need to use the directory command to remove that. So here you are identifying that this is a directory, and you're removing all the contents on the directory. So once I do that and I press my ls, I wouldn't see anything. Sorry, you will not see that directory anymore. So these are just some of the few things that you can actually use. Can you recover a file directory you removed? Yes, you can. So it depends on how you've removed it. So it depends on how you've removed it. But if you just use the basic remove -rf, if you go into your trash folder, you should be able to recover it. But there is a way you can actually delete it completely, so it won't even be in your file in your trash folder. But using the remove-rf, you should be able to just recover it. How do I leave a folder and go to a new folder on my Windows terminal? I'm not so good with Windows, but I don't think it uses the same cd command with Windows, but I think I can actually verify that and get back to you on that. Can I use my inbuilt terminal for my Mac OS? Yes, you can use your inbuilt terminal for your Mac OS. What's your take? Okay. Can you use the find command to look for a folder? Yes, you can use the find command to look for a folder. You can say, let's say and make a folder Alt School again. And I need to use the find command to identify my folder. Okay, so I need to verify that this folder has actually been created. So the next thing I need to do is just use the file name and the type of use the find command and the type of thing we are trying to look for. You can use it to look for anything at all you want to look for in your system. So basically, you just say, okay, find everywhere on school. So it has actually discovered it for you, and it has shown you other things also that are related to this. It's giving you the /2 because we are actually in the folder where it's located, and you can actually use it to also discover a folder. If I want to discover everything, let's take for instance, find in this directory everything that has that is a PDF. The name should be a PDF. Yeah, so you can see it has given me this. If I say find in everywhere in my system, anything that has a name and a name of Alt School, it's not seeing it. Why? Because it's not able to identify it. It's not anywhere in my system. So it's not anywhere it can identify. Let me see, it's still here. If I say find in this anything that has a name of Alt School, you're not seeing it because it's a folder. It's a folder we're looking for. So the process of looking for folders is sometimes can actually be far much more different than the process of looking for systems. If I say I want to look for an empty file inside my current my current directory, all I just need to do is, for instance, just say find everything here with the type F, and that's empty. So you can see it has identified this is a file because it's a file, and that file is actually empty. There's nothing in this file. That's why it's actually giving me this. So there are so many ways you can actually use this to manipulate your system, or to manipulate the content on your what's the name, the content on your folders. Yeah, so running along now, is there any question between the find and the locate command? So yes, there is a difference between the find and the locate command. I don't really use the locate command, but so I think what we've actually been using more has been more of, or what I've been using mostly has actually been more of the find command. But I think the locate command is actually used. I think it's been duplicated. I don't think it's still being used, but a lot of people still use it. But I think it's really been duplicated. You can actually also use that to find applications, or find resources and all that. But But I think it's more of we use more of the find right now, because the find actually has more. There are more use cases for find. But the locate can just be, you can just use that to locate a particular file or something, or a particular application or a particular folder. But I think they both practically the same thing, but the find is actually has more use cases. Yeah. So any other questions? How do I create a folder file on my VM and move it to the host desktop? And also, how do I add text content to the file I created on my VM? That is a whole lot more complicated thing to do. You can create a file, a folder, you can move it, but it also depends on the type of VM you're using. So the process of moving files from a process of moving files from the from a virtual box is different from the process of moving files within a Vagrant system. So you need to specify if you're using a Vagrant box. I think the way you do that is by attaching your system storage, and once you attach your system storage, you can be able to move them from one. You can move from the host to the VM or from the VM to the host. When it comes to permissions, what does group refer to? So actually, for every file that has been created, there is the user, the group, and the all. So these are you can have every file has a user and a group. The group so you can have multiple users within a particular group that can have access to a particular folder. Um, so you can say everyone that is within the group Conrad, you can create a group Conrad. So group, if you want to create a group, for instance, you can think is group add. I think it's group add. That's how you add a group, and you can also add users to that same group. Really can't remember the command now for that, but it's groups add, and so it's a way of sectioning users into groups. It's a way of managing, so you can have multiple users in a particular group, then give them a particular permission, not just for files, but even have access to the terminal of that particular server or whatever, to be able to make some certain requests and things like that on that particular server, execute files, build files, and do different things. So you can create users based on groups. You can create file owners based on groups. So if you have users based on groups, you can say, I don't want these particular users to have access to these files. I don't want these particular users to have access to these files. For instance, if you are managing something that has to do with SSHD, where people would have access to a system, you can say, I want all these users to have access to just this particular folder. So whenever they log in, either they have terminal login to the server, or they have FileZilla login, file share login to the server. They would only have access to those particular files that you have left for them. So particularly that's what the users the groups actually do in Linux. Yeah, so there are some other things again that we can look at when it comes to, if you want to see, look at memory and processes, for instance, you can see how much memory you have on your server left. I don't have free installed here. Okay. I don't have free installed here. Sorry about that. It's not installed. on this. Let's see, PSA UX. So here, this is to see all the processes that are running based on the various users. Now you can see the user, which is me, and the processes I'm running. The root user. These are some of the users by default that comes with Mac. Some other things again that runs on Mac that are not related to me. So as you can see, now if you have different users on your system, you should be able to see what everybody is doing at the same time as the administrator. So if I want to display the system messages, sometimes you can decide to have messages like banners that are stored on your system. So if I don't have that also, so you can see how. Oh, no, it should be the message. Sorry. So this is showing me the message from. I don't have any banner stored, but if I had the banner stored, it would have showed me the message that maybe the welcome message that has already been stored on the system for anyone that's trying to log into it. There are quite a lot of things that you can also do. There are various file editors that you can use. I'm familiar with. I like to use Nano, but a lot of people use this. This is actually used to manipulate a particular file. So if I want to manipulate this file, I can write on it. Save it. Okay, I can't open the file for writing. Okay, yes, that's because let me create another file because this file shouldn't actually be written on. Controls. Okay, so if I create another file, for instance, if I say touch test.yaml, so this is a YAML file I'm creating, and I use Nano for this. I think I need to have depends on my rights, so I think I need to use a sudo to do that. Nano test. Definitely, you need to have your password. If I say hello world, Control X, yes. So right now, I've been able to write to it. If I decide to, you can decide to use a cat. Let's just use a cat to see what is on it. This will actually display what's on this file. Hello world is what is on this file. So you actually use a cat to display what is the contents of a particular file. You can use a cat to display that. If you go back to use your Nano test, you can see it's just the hello world that is there. And if I use a VI, I hate VI to be honest with you, but I mean I use it also. I just feel sometimes it makes my life very difficult. But you can also see, so this VI is also like a text editor, just like Nano is. Oh, sorry. Escape. So I'll take questions again, and I'll stop sharing my screen. Why is password needed? That was because I was trying to edit the file as an administrator. So I use the sudo to do that. Do you set password? If so, yes. You set passwords when you're spinning up the system. So the administrator password is what you're going to use. What's the number equivalent for? the permissions. It depends on the particular permission. So, like I said, the 400 is for. So every permission has they have a different normal rating. I think I would share that on the group, so you can see the different numbers for different permissions. Okay. Does anyone have any more questions? Yeah, Samson, thank you. I also hate Vim. Epuka, you must be very good for you to like Vim. Mirabel, I'm so sorry. I'm pretty sure that the next training would have a better. It would come out a lot better. Yeah. At some point, I also got this thing, but I think we can make it a whole better. I will create a resource and share with everyone. I'll try to create a resource and share with everyone before the next training. With what resource we have, we can also spend another 30 minutes going through Linux. But I'll be quite honest with you. Yeah, we can't spend the next, if we start going through the Linux commands that are currently existing for the next 3 months, we'll still be where we are. So I'll just do a little brush off, share around a cheat sheet that would have some Linux commands that we all can use or get familiar with. It's the good thing about Linux is that you have to be an ardent user of Linux so you can actually understand how it works. You'll be able to try out most of these commands while you're using it based on necessity, based on the request or based on what you want to use it for. So, but I would try to share. I'll try to share. Um, what's the name? A cheat sheet. Trust me, just guys. Well, I'll share a cheat sheet. I'll share materials that we could actually use to get familiar with this. And in the next training, I'll spend the first 30 minutes to train us on how to use to do some little training on how to use Linux. How do you terminate a running process? By use your Control C to terminate a running process. But it depends. Okay, yes, you can also use the kill-9 and the process ID. That would actually help you share kill a running process. So you need to know the running process. Yeah. With the number of people I'm seeing here, 179, even WhatsApp would not be enough to handle this quite number. But I think there's a Slack channel, so we should all try to ask your questions on the Slack channel. I think you all should all have access to the Slack channel. Ask your questions on the Slack channels, and I'll try to respond to as many as I can. The most important thing, Sean, is to get the job done. So if you would rather prefer to use some people prefer a Mercedes, some prefer a BMW. I'm a Tesla person, so it all depends on. The most important thing is to get the job done. They're all exotic cars, and they will definitely take us to where they want to take us to. Yes, I truly CBK be looking like Okocha. Okocha no fine reach me now. All right, guys. WhatsApp has increased the number to 500 plus in a group. Oh, that's interesting. So I think we will actually talk to the. I think I'll get this information and see if we can use WhatsApp. Telegram. I'm not in Telegram. I'm so sorry. I think Telegram can be. I see Telegram as something that actually invades on our privacy, kind of. So I think I would rather prefer the WhatsApp group. But if that is okay by the organizers, definitely we'll get to know about that. But I think we should all stick with Slack for now, while that will actually be in consideration. Okay. So let me see if there are more questions. Please, was there a particular reason we were asked to download Ubuntu instead of? I think based on when the system was created, Ubuntu was the LTS. Ubuntu 20 was the LTS at that time. There is 22, and but a lot of things that we use is still you're running. They are still more stable under the Ubuntu 20, so that might be one of the reasons. But whichever one you're comfortable with, but you need to understand that there for every version change, there are also some changes also. So if there are some things that you might be able to do easily with Ubuntu 20.04, which you can't easily work on the Ubuntu 22. How do I fix my error when I have configured my private network to DHCP? I run Vagrant up, it shows the error below. So basically, this is an access denied for this is a permission thing. Um, probably, probably whoever is running this, the user who is trying to make this permission, does not have the right to make this does not have the right to make this edit. I think I would like to have more context to the issue so that I can be able to advise you better. But from what I'm seeing here, I'm seeing access denied. So I think it has to do with a user access. No, it keeps telling me the Windows installer service can't be accessed, so it didn't install. What can I do? Please try it, please try it, please try it. I think for Windows, you just have to use the you have to use the you have to use go to the Vagrant website and download the image and download the installer and install it from the installer. So if you can't access the say the Windows installer service can't be accessed, that also might also be a permission issue. But if there is a way you can actually install it without using the installer, probably you can download the Vagrant box itself and install it from there. Might be better for you. So let me see if so you need to know that for you to actually use Vagrant, there's definitely some things you need to actually do. So go through the website. I will share the website on this link again, and I'm pretty sure I'll send it on the chat link. So pretty sure that you can actually get your solutions from there. Okay, is Git Bash okay? Yes, Git Bash is fine. Slack is fine actually. Slack is the best for professional communication. File, should I install Vagrant again? No. So all you need to do is just to download another Vagrant file from wherever it is and just do your Vagrant up and you should be fine. So you don't need to download or install Vagrant again. Um, so this I think this session is please you all should bear with me. I think there was a little bit of mix up. So I think the next session will probably be much more organized, better from my side. I'll be able to treat us more with notes and things. I'll try to also share some documentation before the training, hopefully, so we can also get familiarized with it. Then I promised that I would do another 30 minutes training on Linux before we move into, or 30 minutes training on Linux before moving to the next thing. So do we need Vagrant if we add Git Bash? Yes, you would. Yes, you would. Git Bash is just a terminal. It doesn't do the work of a Vagrant. Vagrant is used to is used to help you build VMs. So yes, you will. Um, Trust me, M1 has a thing. There are ways you can use M1, but you have to go through the workarounds. I'm really sorry about that. I I think that's one of the reasons why I don't use my M1, because there are lots of issues with Docker containers and things like that. But I think there are workarounds which you can actually explore that can help resolve these issues. Henry, this is a Linux class, so this is a cloud Linux class right now. So sorry about that, but Windows users, whatever particular issues you have, you can share with us on the Slack channel, and we'll see how best we can help you resolve it. What does Vagrant do, and what does Vagrant box we install do? Okay, so actually Vagrant itself, what Vagrant does is it helps you spin up, it orchestrates spinning up of a Linux machine. But actually, Vagrant cannot do that on its own, because it needs a VM, a virtual machine, to be running on your system. It needs a more like a hyperprocessor to be spin up on your system, which is where the VM comes in. The virtual box comes in, or the I think virtual box is by Red Hat. There are two other, VMware or whichever um, hyper something is one for Windows. So once you do your Vagrant up, it gives you like a very easy communication to that particular VM. The Vagrant actually downloads the contents of that VM, runs the VM on the virtual machine, which is what the virtual box does. It will start running that VM on that virtual machine, and you would be able to communicate to your Vagrant using your terminal. So it's more like an easy way to communicate, to build up and spin up different virtual machines without having to do them manually by installing having the ISO and all that. So it just makes it a whole lot more easier. Donald, no, Windows users are not finished. Windows users are not finished. Okay, you're not finished. We'll see what we can do. Okay. Oh, big question. I think you need to upgrade your you need to upgrade your PowerShell. Mm, Solar, you need to upgrade your PowerShell. That will help you resolve that issue. For weekly exercises, we are told to create a Git project to share with our instructor, but I don't have an idea of how to do that. In the Slack channel, I would give you a Git. I'll give you a Git page that you can send your projects to. Can you please clarify on something? I got disconnected at some point. I'm running Ubuntu on my system as a dual boot. Do I still need to install Vagrant? I think that is dependent on you. If you want to install Vagrant, fine. If you don't want to, depends on what you want to use Vagrant for. I think the whole essence of Vagrant is to help us, to show us how we can run Linux on our system as a virtual machine. So since you're using a dual boot, you're already Linux. If you need a Linux system, then you can actually use that. Difference between Vagrant and Docker, they are both completely different. Vagrant helps you spin up virtual machines. Docker actually helps you. It's a container system, which we're going to talk about much later during the course. Yes, I will. I'll try to search for that, and I will share that with you, anonymous. Okay. I think Uh, do you advise us to get a Mac? Um, I think it depends on you. Depends on people's prerogative. Not. It depends on what you want to use. Not everybody is proficient with using a Mac. So if you feel you're proficient in using a Mac, it would be good. You can still get a Windows-based system. You can still use Windows. You can still use Linux as a dual boot or as a VM. So I think it all depends on you and what you're trying to achieve. I think those are the things that really does depend on. So if you're trying to get a Mac, um, so you don't face this M1 issue, you might actually want to stick with the Intel processor for now until probably after they do the next launch, which I know there's been some work as regards backward compatibility with the Mac users. That's just the challenge the Mac is having right now, but with the M1 systems. And also depends on what you use it for. I use an M1 also, but I use it for various things and it hasn't given me so much issues. I don't think I've ever used it for something like this before, so I can't tell. Ubuntu Focal. I don't know if there's a default login for Ubuntu Focal, but I'm pretty sure your login should actually be created while you're installing the Ubuntu system. Okay. Um, can you clarify on something? So I got disconnected at some point. Please, I think we should all. I think we should all. It's a type of Mac computer kind of. Okay, if are there more questions aside from commanders? Is there any command line interface you can recommend? I use item, so you can also use item. Mm, any more questions? Yeah, Saeed, Windows is the best. Yeah, that's true. Okay, guys. I will be looking out for your questions in the Slack channel, and I would be responding to as many as I can between now. Probably, I think we just have some time. Most sometimes you might get my responses to your questions much late at night, and I just whenever I do respond, please kindly bear with me. Thank you all, and do have a great day. Good night.